All right, 7:02, let's go ahead and get it started. So, hi everyone that's joining live and everyone that's watching the recording. My name is Logan Chandler and I work at the Colorado Mountain Club. We're really lucky to have a really cool kind of unique opportunity tonight to be joined by a wellness company. So that's pretty unique for the Colorado Mountain Club. A lot of times we learn from athletes and experts in the outdoor field. But one thing I think we all know is you get physically beaten down sometimes and mentally beaten down by whatever goal you're pursuing, whether it's trying a new sport or pushing yourself to the next level. So I'm really excited to work with someone like Mita Dunn here, who's joining us to present this topic. And this event goes alongside our Colorado Mountain Fest virtual race, which is ongoing. So if you aren't participating in that, it does go through the whole month of October, where the idea being that it's a virtual race you'll do on your own. You log, you set a goal, whether it's biking or hiking or running, trail running, and you'll set a goal and you kind of join this official race with the Colorado Mountain Club and community, and you raise a little bit of money for the CMC, but more importantly, you're pushing yourself and setting goals. And if you want, you can set up a fundraising page where we give you some kind of stories about our youth education program and our conservation department and some of the things that the money that we raise through this event can serve. So some really kind of powerful things the Colorado Mountain Club does in those two particular areas. So definitely check that out. And I would have to say thank you so much to Wellspring of Life for being a sponsor of that event and helping support the Colorado Mountain Club. So a couple of ground rules. Oh, my video just went out. Sorry, everyone. A couple of ground rules for kind of how this will work tonight is there will be moments where we want this to be interactive, especially with a smaller group tuning in live. So you'll be kind of brought into the conversation by Mita. So when she is kind of presenting on a topic and maybe ask some questions, feel free to unmute yourself and also unmute your video so you can kind of have a dialogue right there. If the conversation or the topic does go a little bit too long, we will have to keep it moving along, in which case any questions or anything that you wish you said, please put it in the chat box and I will kind of field all of those responses into one just Google Doc on the side, and we can at the end come back to those questions and do a little Q&A at the end. So it will be kind of a mix of question and answers throughout. At certain moments that'll be fairly obvious, so we do want you to participate in, and then at the end you'll get that opportunity for sure. With that said, it seems like everyone nowadays knows how Zoom works because we've all become experts. Totally okay to be on mute and have your video off if you don't want to be on, especially because, like I said, we are recording. So if you have any issues with that, you can just kind of have your video off and no one will see you. I think that's kind of, oh, one other thing, and then I hand it over. We'll email out the recording, so if you're taking notes or anything like that, just know that you're going to get this, the PowerPoint, the recording, all that later, so you don't need to take such detailed notes. And then also there's going to be some specific attachments, kind of like some nutritional recipes that we'll be covering tonight that will also be included in that email. So expect that, if not tomorrow, then in the coming days shortly after. So thank you all for joining, and I'm going to hand it off, and we're so lucky to have Mita Dunn. So Mita, take it away.
Thank you, Logan. I'm really excited to be here. As Logan had said, so my name is Mita Dunn. I am the founder of Wellspring of Life International, and actually recent member of the Colorado Mountain Club. I was brought out to Colorado in COVID, and so been really excited to experience the opportunities in the mountains. I have absolutely loved nature and hiking and getting out and exploring. So it's been super exciting to really get to connect with others in the Colorado Mountain Club to really learn a lot more about the backcountry there in Colorado. So just, I'm sort of operating off of 2 pieces of technology, kind of 3. We're having some internet issues here. So I have one on the Wi-Fi, but it might sort of disappear. So I do have things tethered to my phone to hopefully not have any issues. But you may sort of see a little bit of funkiness going on in one of my screens, so I apologize. Thank you guys for being here this evening. It's a great pleasure to be able to share this information. So today, you know, obviously we're going to be talking about mountain fitness and that mind-body connection. This is, for me, sort of a new way of presenting material that I've been presenting for some time. So I'm really excited about sort of changing up a little bit and trying this new format for how I present my material. So just I like to do kind of introductions and overviews, kind of what to expect for this evening. So I will be doing some introductions. I'm actually excited that not everybody who's registered has jumped on, because with a smaller group, we will actually have time to go around if you want and have people introduce themselves. I'll go over the goals and objectives. We'll be talking about that mind-body connection to athletic performance, giving some nutrition tips, and then talking about breathing, stretching, and posture techniques. And again, as Logan had said, if you want to jump in and ask questions, you can either put them in the chat or you can unmute your mic and jump in and ask a question and during the workshop, or if you want to hold it till the end, that's fine. I know sometimes it just is really effective to in the moment ask that question, so I'm not opposed at all to people asking questions as we go along. So I'm going to move ahead. Also, for the sake of time, I do try to be really mindful of the time. I also do recognize, just so you know, I'm really passionate, obviously, about this topic. I've clearly started my own company because I'm so passionate. So sometimes I get a little too passionate, but I definitely will be mindful of that time and respectful of everybody that's here. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I am a single mom of 2 young adults. My educational background, I have a bachelor's in social work, a master's in urban planning and policy, and another master's in ministry. I'm also a certified group fitness instructor and a certified wellness coach. It's a really eclectic background, but woven throughout everything that I've been doing, health and wellness, and really helping people from all walks of life achieve their true potential has really been a motivator and a focus of all the work that I've done. And really, you know, seen how it's really kind of brought me to where I am today. My professional background, I spent 15 years in social services, creating and developing programs designed, like I said, to help youth and families in the inner cities live healthy lives and achieve their potential. I have 9 years in working with a corporate wellness company on multiple sides of it: operations, logistics, supplies, and compliance work. But again, in all of those different areas, really working to make sure that I'm integrating in small and big ways all of these different aspects of wellness. And then obviously I've now started, during COVID, I've started my own wellness company, but the work that is the foundation of this company, I have been doing on a volunteer basis for the last several years. I've worked both nationally and internationally, focused on wellness, the environment, and making the world a better place. A lot of the work that I've done has been in churches. I've been working actually in communities in very rural towns in Cuba, and I worked in the Dominican Republic and Jamaica, and then done some work here in the United States as well. And then just a little bit of personal passions. Running, I've realized that I have over 30 years of running experience, shall we say. I've done 4 marathons, 3 half marathons, 3 Ragnar trails, and 1 Ragnar road race, and a multitude of other races. And I love getting outside, experiencing nature. I would prefer to be running on trails or beaches more than anything else. And then, you know, connecting with others and, you know, experiencing different cultures are some of the passions of mine. So that is just a little bit of my background. I would love, though, to learn a little bit about each of you who are in, quote unquote, the room with me. So if you would like, it would be wonderful if you could do a quick share. Share your name, your sporting passion or passions, what drew you to this workshop, and a quick fun fact about you. So like to go around. We can do it popcorn style. Does anybody want to jump in and do a quick share?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not gonna bail anyone out. I'll go last. Else jump in.
This is Valerie. I can go first. So my name is Valerie Steinmetz. I don't know. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, cool. I'd say my sporting passions. Well, currently I've been getting into mountain biking and really have enjoyed learning the technique and skill required in just overcoming any obstacles that are along the trail and things like that. It's really been fascinating for me. I have run most of my life, so I think I'm trying to give my knees a break and transition into some other sports. And I would say what drew me to this workshop was really just self-growth and just trying to learn as much as I can through the CMC. A fun fact about myself, I lived in Zambia for 2 years working with community health centers in their rural communities. So
That's really exciting. I actually have a pastor in Zambia that keeps asking me to come over, and if it weren't for COVID, I would have been there. So thank you for sharing, Valerie.
Sure.
Who wants to go next?
I can go next. My name is Russ. Really enjoy mountaineering, hiking, swimming also actually is what I like to do to just clear my head and not hear anything. Self-growth, I like that answer. I think I injured my arm. I had a torn biceps tendon. So I spent a lot of time inside my head. And so just the topic in general of the mind-body connection has been very interesting to me. Fun fact for me is, I don't know, I'm married, my wife's named Anne, and I have 2 daughters, 8 and 10, and we've got a birthday this weekend. So looking forward to that.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Russ. So we've got Betty, Don, or Tim. Who wants to go next? And actually, Crystal, I'm sorry, I didn't see you jump in here.
I saw Betty unmute. I can step in and bail you out if you need to, but yeah, if any of you do want to share, if not, I'll go. All right, I'll go, and then if anyone else wants to, you can jump in after me. So yeah, Logan Chandler. A lot of you already heard me introduce myself at the beginning. My sporting passions are kind of entry level at everything. I'm trying to take it to the next level in some areas, but summer I've been mountain biking a lot. I've been recovering from some leg injuries, so I kind of had a pulled groin, inner thigh muscle that's really made getting back into running tough for me, but I am going through some physical therapy and finally able to kind of do a good pace for a few miles, and then with the hope being able to get back out trail running, which is kind of how I injured it to begin with. Really, this workshop, obviously, working with Mia has been great, and what I was kind of talking about at the beginning, the coolest thing for me is the mindfulness aspect, as I do think that's really important in all areas of life, and especially, I'm sure we've all pushed ourselves a little bit out of our comfort zone in the outdoors at some point or the other, whether it's rock climbing or skiing or snowboarding or anything, just going out and going on a hike with some new people that you haven't met and stepping out of your comfort zone that way. And it's so easy to get into your own head. So I think that's such a cool aspect of this. Fun fact about me is I got my name from the street that I was born on here in Denver. So Logan Street. I was born at the hospital in Denver, and my parents, I guess, was the youngest child and weren't feeling very creative, so that's how they named me on the way out of the hospital, I guess. So, and yeah, thanks so much for everyone being here.
Well, Logan's a fun name. I like that name. So thank you guys so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. It's always exciting to learn a little bit more about each individual, as well as, just really understanding, what your interest is. So thank you guys for that. And if at any point, somebody else wants to chime in, please feel free to do that. Valerie, I see I'm having inspiration can come from anywhere. Absolutely. I love that what you just said there, Valerie, because it really can. I mean, inspiration can come from the smallest things. So I think when you're talking about mindfulness, and we'll get into a little bit more of mindfulness later on, but really looking for those small little things that can become very inspiring is super important, especially, we've heard from two people already that, we're talking about overcoming injuries, right? And so, injury is always a possibility, and really trying to come back after, whether it's an injury or a sickness, especially if, you are used to being really active and engaged. And even if not, if you're just trying to start out and become active and engaged, finding small things to just inspire you and keep you moving is really, really important. So thank you, Valerie, for sharing that. All right, so a couple of the goals and objectives for today. We're going to talk, so, the interesting thing is, as I was thinking about this, one of the things that just has really become really apparent, and I think living most of my life at sea level and then moving up to the mountains, really makes you understand and appreciate oxygen so much more, right? And so the role of oxygen in hydration in athletic performance, everyday life, the role of oxygen is crucial. But as we're talking about not just any athletic performance, but really engaging in athletic performance in the mountains, it's really important. And so and oxygen is so incredibly important when you're thinking about mindfulness, right? So we'll be talking about foods and obviously their role on our energy, but then also foods that can help transport that oxygen, through our system, and then ways that our breath can really help to improve our athletic performance. When we go into nutrition, I'm a really big person on true food, right? And nutrient density and eating and not eating boring stuff. I love eating. I love the food that I eat. But I also make sure that I eat in ways that fuel my body as opposed to fill my body. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then we will actually engage in some practicing of stretches and breathing techniques that will help your body transport oxygen and fuel to reach new heights in your athletic performance. And then, like Logan did say, I've actually created a little trifold with some recipes and some tips for a take home. Normally people would actually physically be taking it, but it will be sent out in your guys' email when Logan sends the link for this video, or for this workshop. I do want to just give a disclaimer. I am not a doctor, nor am I a certified nutritionist, so I cannot diagnose or make specific recommendations for your particular situation. And also in this workshop, I will ask that you participate both in sharing and in some physical movements, but your participation is not required. But just know that actually participating, sometimes it is, in just the sharing can enhance your overall experience as well as the overall experience of others. I hesitate using the word expert because I feel like we all have our own level of expertise, right? And so there are a lot of things that I know, but again, even on the mountain sort of athletic side of things, it is still newer in my world. So some of you have potentially a lot more experience where you can even add more value to this, to the workshop and to the experience for everybody. So please, don't hesitate to speak up. And also the participation when we do some of the different movements and breathing, it's when you participate, you get so much more from it. I've done this workshop similar to this many times, like all over in other countries, and just 5 minutes, and people walk in with pain, discomfort, and they walk out and they're like, hey, the backache that I had, the headache that I had, this whatever was going on with me is like gone, and they've been struggling with it for years. So so little things that we do can make a big difference both now and then also help in your application moving forward. Just so you know, though, during the stretching or physical component of this workshop, it is important that you pay attention to both instructions and your own body to ensure your own safety and well-being. I mean, we're not going to do anything strenuous here, but still, it is, if you've got an injury, right, then you do want to make sure that you only participate to the extent that you can. And if you have to opt out, you know, there's no judgment. What's important is that you're taking care of your body and doing what you can, not pushing too hard so that you get re-injured, because that's not the point of any of this. And like I said, all of this information that I give is information based on credible research, and it's been implemented both in my own life personally as well as the lives of many others. So, so we'll take it from here. So I want to start off and talk about what makes a healthy athlete. There's many attributes, right? We can kind of go on a long list, but you know, there are kind of 4 elements that I kind of drilled things down to, and not necessarily things that everybody thinks about, you know, into what it means to be an athlete, a healthy athlete. And so what I have listed here are these 4 essential qualities. One of them is proper nutrition, which a lot of us will think about, but kind of how we think about nutrition is not necessarily the mainstream way of thinking about nutrition. The second bullet I have is actually a strong immune system, which people don't necessarily say, hey, I want to be a good athlete, like I'm going to build my immune system up. But we'll talk a little bit about that, because really your immune system is core and essential to just, you know, proper functioning. And so we'll talk about your immune system and its relationship to nutrition, your immune system and its relationship to breathing and mindfulness as well. Adequate energy and alertness, and then obviously effective training. The top 3 I will be spending most of the time with. Effective training, I mean, each of you will have your own level of training, you know, so we're not going to go into your individual training plans, but it's important to remember that, you know, you can fuel yourself well, we can talk about mindfulness, and you still have to train, right? So that is also important. So how you fill your body through both food and breathing has a profound impact on both the short and long-term health of anybody, and especially an athlete. And you know, too often we hear about people's athletic life being truncated because of injury and other things, because we're so prone to and pushing ourselves to extremes, and you know, and end up injuring ourselves and have to kind of cut things short. I did say earlier, I've been running for 30 years of my life. There's not a lot of people who end up running that long, because pretty soon, you know, the injuries on your knees and things of that nature just, you know, your body just starts shutting down. So to be able to, you know, still continue to run, I run barefoot. I know that it's not something that everybody recommends. I love it. I hate shoes. So as much as possible, I actually do run barefoot. And, you know, I'm still going. So I'm sad if there's ever a day that I'll have to stop running. So let's talk a little bit about nutrition. I like to talk about nutrient density versus nutrient empty, right? And so oftentimes people will say, hey, you know, I've been eating, I've been fueling, and yet though what they're putting in their bodies is actually not really fueling them for success, right? And so research suggests that the standard American diet, which ironically, they also term SAD, because it is sad that the standard American diet is energy or calorie rich, yet nutrient poor. So there's lots of calories, we'll fill up our bodies, but those calories really do nothing for us. I you know, I say it's almost like eating air, but you know, it does nothing to actually give you the true energy you need to sustain for life, really, not just exercise, but for life. On the other hand, though, if you really start fueling your body with nutrient-dense foods that are rich in naturally occurring vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients important for health, without excess saturated fats, other added sugars, and sodium, those foods will really help you to endure for the long run, right? And so the foods that we're talking about when it comes to nutrient density are fruits and vegetables, whole grains, fish, lean meats, skinless poultry, peas, beans, nuts, seeds. But too often, you know, we think of, we need the big burger, the fries, you know, we talk about, if we're talking about athletic performance, we're talking about Gatorades and other drinks that actually have just as much artificial added sugars, artificial colors, and other synthetic nutrients that actually our bodies don't understand how to truly process, right? And those types of food or additives in our food products really actually start to slow down and tear down our systems. And research is really finding that, you know, foods with these added sugars, the saturated fats, the artificial colors, the high fructose corn syrups, and we're going to get into that a little bit more, that they are some of the big triggers for inflammation, which then leads to a whole host of diseases, cancers, and the heart problems that we're facing in this nation. And if we really can go back to looking at food that truly comes from the earth, not food that sounds like it comes from the earth, not food that's filled with a lot of synthetic additives, we can actually start shifting not just how we feel on a day-to-day basis, but really make an improvement in our overall performance, athletic performance. There's lots of, and I don't like to ascribe to a specific diet. I don't like the term diet, really. The term, most people use the term diet as of, you know, I'm going on a diet, I'm trying to lose weight, right? Your diet should be the lifestyle, the way that you eat, right? And so really a diet should consist of specific types of food that are designed to provide the energy and the nutrition that your body needs. A diet shouldn't be about cutting calories to be able to fit a certain mold or perception, right? And so, you know, as you look out there, it's really, we kind of live in a society right now where understanding what is the best thing to eat, you know, what should or shouldn't we be eating becomes really convoluted. Oftentimes, you know, we see one research study that says, you know, it's good to eat eggs, and then the next one comes out a day later and says it's not good to eat eggs, right? So there's a lot of confusion about what we should and shouldn't be eating, right? Then we also talk about like what's on our nutrition labels, and if it says there's this much fat or there's this much sugar or there's no sugar, is that what we should be using to guide us? Unfortunately, it's really confusing because there can be products that say they have 0 sugars, but they have artificial sugars, right? And artificial sugars are really damaging to our body, right? Or they'll say they have 0 sugars, but the components in it, actually, they're not a sugar, right? Like a fructose, but they actually convert to sugar very quickly in our bodies, like breads and pastas. And so there were oftentimes, you know, kind of led to believe something by marketing more than by what that product actually is doing to our system, right? And so, so it becomes really difficult to sort of look through and make decisions on what we should be eating. One of the things that I actually like to ascribe to is, you know, I don't suggest actually looking at nutrition labels. I actually suggest looking at ingredient lists, right? And so when you are thinking about what it is that you need to be putting in your body, you really want to look at those those ingredient lists and see, you want that list to be as small as possible. And you want that list to be actual, something from shall we say, the earth. And when I say the earth, I'm not just saying it has to be just like a vegetarian diet. It could be an animal, right? Eating meats, I'm not against eating meats. I eat meats myself. But it really should be not a processed form of a meat, right? It shouldn't be apple flavoring, right? It shouldn't be, things that are designed to seem like, but it should actually be the actual product, right? And with less added, additional vitamins, supplements, colors, flavors, and things of that nature. So as you're thinking about, fueling your body, you want to start thinking about how much can I actually pull out a lot of these additional fillers. And unfortunately, what is really marketed out there is really loaded with a lot of processed products that can be beneficial for a time. And I'm not saying, there are benefits to supplements, and there are benefits. There are times where I'll have a protein shake and things of that nature, but we should not be actually creating most of our diets, right? Most of what we're doing in terms of fueling our body based around these energy bars, these protein shakes, and electrolyte supplement drinks, right? We really should be actually trying to actually put in whole foods in our bodies and looking at that combination of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, eating them together to fuel our bodies most effectively. So I'm going to pause here for a second. Does anybody have questions? Because I know this is a lot of information. So I want to kind of pause and make sure that everybody's on track with me. Okay, so there are no questions. All right, so I will move forward. So, as we start looking at what we're putting in our bodies, like I said, we should be really actually trying to do whole actual food, right? And then thinking of how we're combining them, right? So there's a theory of thought, and they called Pcf Balanced Eating, right? And so it's having a protein, a fat, and a carbohydrate all in the same meal, right? So having a meat or a nuts or lentils, right, with some kind of olive oil and then maybe some fruits and veggies, right? So thinking about as you start your morning, right, as whether you're, going out to do a workout or you're going out for a race, what are you having for breakfast that morning? What is going to sustain you better than maybe a bowl of cereal, or even sometimes a protein shake is actually do some scrambled eggs, with some kale and some green peppers and some onions and some garlic, cooked in olive oil, right? And you can have those together, and maybe it's some whole grain bread, right? That is going to sustain you so much longer than, just a protein shake. The nutrition that it's going to give your body really is, in the long run, so much more sustaining. For instance, for dinner, you may end up doing salmon with quinoa and a green salad with some pumpkin seeds and some sunflower seeds, some avocados and olives, and that's in and of itself right there a very complete meal, and the energy and the nutrition that you get from it is very sustaining. And the nice thing about a meal like that is you can actually eat larger portions of it and not have to worry about, in the end, feeling very bloated, having too much and putting on too much weight, and the improvement on your athletic performance, you'll see tremendous gains. It's also important, oftentimes we see different diets where they're really focused on just getting proteins or just getting carbohydrates, right? And there's a lot of trendy fad diets right now that focus on one versus all three of them. But the reality is our body needs all three of them working together at the same time to truly provide us the energy that we need. So when we only carbo loading, and that's all we're doing is eating a bunch of carbs, and we're missing the proteins and then we're missing the fats, our body is not able to be as efficient and functional as it would be if you actually combine them in your meal. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to move slides on the wrong page. So again, I've given you some examples of this, so I don't want to beat a dead horse, but here are some examples of some foods that will fuel your body in the long haul: nuts, beans, and lentils. Veggies, especially the darker your fruits and veggies are, the healthier they are for you. They have a lot more vitamins, minerals, and nutrients than something like a celery. It's not to discredit celery, because there are still beneficial properties in celery, or things of that nature. But start looking for those kales, looking for those Brussels sprouts, asparagus, right? Purple carrots, things of that nature. Adding those dark leafies are really important. Fruits, I mean, the best fruits for you are really those berries, right? The raspberries, the blueberries, the strawberries, the cherries, some of the tropicals, right? Other fruits are fine, but you do want to make sure that your fruits you're eating in moderation, because they still do have extra sugars, which are good. But you don't want to just eat fruits. You want to make sure that you're actually eating more veggies, beans, and lentils than you're actually eating of fruits, which I will confess, I love fruits a lot more than veggies, although in my last probably 15 years, I've really started, once you start learning how to cook veggies, there's a lot more veggies that I actually enjoy more than fruits these days. So eggs are really good. Different squashes, there's so many different types of squashes with a lot of different sort of flavor complexities to them that are super exciting. And whole grains are some really good foods that you should be eating. I do have kind of a spread to my right. In a little bit, I'll actually kind of show you some things that I sometimes will travel with. I travel a lot. So I actually have really learned, I've worked with a nutritionist I have seen for over 20 years, a holistic practitioner, and they have a holistic nutritionist on staff. And so she was really crucial a couple of years ago when I was preparing for a half marathon in Havana, in helping me think through my nutrition, especially knowing that I was going to be 3 weeks in a country that, had limited access to certain foods that I needed for my body. So I'll show you that in a few minutes. But one of the other things as we start talking about foods, the really nice thing about actually fueling your body with true foods, right? With fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, nuts, and things of that nature is that they, like each of these, have a lot of different benefits to our bodies. And a lot of the foods that I listed in the first screen are also very iron rich. And I'm going to bring up, because in the earlier, when I started talking about oxygen, right? And oxygen's vital role in our athletic performance. And so I really want to hit on this. Iron is an essential nutrient for transporting oxygen throughout the body, right? And so as you think about your fueling of your body, and as you think about your performance, and like I said, I think, having now lived in the mountains for 6 months, coming from sea level, I really realized like the shifts that I had to make, even in my own diet, even though I was already eating healthy. There were other things that I needed to do to help my body adjust, right? And so exercising in an environment where oxygen, there's a level of scarcity of it, shall we say, it's really important that you are doing everything that you can to try to make sure that you're providing your body what it needs. So if you do find yourself saying, hey, look, like I've got to kind of get this oxygen moving, what are some foods that will help in this process, right? Here are some examples of some iron-rich foods that will really help to boost those iron levels in your body, and really help to transport the oxygen. So green leafy vegetables, kale, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, dried fruits, especially apricots, are actually really high in iron. Just so you know, it is important when you look at dried fruits, you do want to try to make sure that as much as possible, that they don't have added sugars. Most dried fruits, you really don't need extra sugar, because really what you're doing is you're concentrating all those sugars when you dehydrate them, right? So try to avoid the added sugars, try to avoid the added preservatives, because some of them will use preservatives that are actually, you know, chemicals that are just detrimental to our body, right? So in the long run, because they do kind of build up over time. And so dried fruits are really great in terms of iron. Berries, dark berries, especially raspberries, beans and lentils, cashews, dried coconut, tuna, salmon, halibut, and then red meat. Beets are also really good on the iron side as well. I forgot to add that to this list. Excuse me. But like I said, if you find that you just feel like, you know, you need to kind of get that oxygen moving through your body, you may want to add a few more of these, you know, to your diet, you know, as you're engaging in your athletic performance. The other thing that I think it's important when we're talking about foods, and I talked about sort of how the food system that we have in this world makes it really difficult to sort of weed through and know what to eat. And so I say, look, you know, I try not to be a stickler about things, but there are certain things that as much as possible, I will avoid. And so one of the things is, oh, you know what? So sugar of any type. It's hard to avoid all sugars, but one of the things that you do need to be mindful of sugars, even when it comes in fruits, is that sugars can actually, they really weaken our immune system, right? And they become the breeding ground for microbes to grow, right? We all have bacteria in our gut and in our bodies that's naturally occurring, and that bacteria is important, right? The healthy bacteria is important. But when we add too much sugar into our body, it actually creates an overgrowth of these bacteria, which actually makes it really difficult for our bodies to digest properly and assimilate our food appropriately. So, you know, if you're saying, hey, I want to be really healthy, and you're just eating, I remember meeting somebody a couple years ago, and he was a bodybuilder, and he was a fruitarian. All he did was eat fruit. And in the long run, just eating fruit is actually not very healthy. You're getting that nutrition, but it's too much sugar in your body. You need to balance it with veggies. You need to balance it with your legumes, right? With your beans. If you're not going to eat meat, you still need to balance it. So you do want to be careful of your sugars. Again, naturally occurring sugars in fruit is okay. You just want to make sure that you're not overdoing it. But I have a whole slide on sugar just because there are some facts about sugar that are really interesting and eye-opening that I think help people to put sugar in perspective. So I won't talk anymore about sugar. Dairy is another one that you want to do your best to avoid, especially if you're talking about athletic performance, because dairy is very what's called coagulating or mucus forming. And so when you're out there trying to breathe, right, and you eat a lot of dairy, it actually creates a lot of mucus in your body, which makes it difficult to breathe at times. And it makes it difficult for bacteria and germs to move out of your system. And so you've got a greater tendency to get sick. And again, it just, you know, it just actually makes breathing a difficult process, a more difficult process. I noticed in my own personal life when there are times where I still dip into dairy, but when I go clean on dairy, it's like you can breathe more easily, and life is really like, I'm not a heavy person, but I feel lighter when I actually remove dairy from my system. Artificial anything, so artificial sugars, colors, and flavorings. There's too many studies that link artificials to cancers, hyperactivity, and a whole host of other diseases and health problems. So really, I mean, if there's one thing that you start taking out of your diet is if you see anything artificial, take it out. Start there. A simple way to make big changes for sure. And then whites, white flour, white sugars, white rice, shall I say, and white pastas, right? The whites, oftentimes you'll see that listed as bleached in the term of flour, right? And then, your refined sugars. The reality is the whites kind of came along when it comes to the sugar, flours, rices, and pasta, because once they started hulling whatever it was, that grain or that sugar, they realized they had all this excess waste, and they said, how do we find ways to make profits out of it, right? They also, some of this happened, in times of scarcity. And so they said, hey, we need to feed more people. So they started coming up with ways to use normally what would be a waste product from these fibers and say, let's use it to make cheaper bread or sugar, etc., to kind of extend the life, shall we say, of that product. But the nutritional value, there is no nutritional value. And all of these things actually convert immediately into sugars in our body. They spike, they give us like a really fast, rush, but really quickly it then leaves us flat. And you'll also find that, like, for instance, when I was younger, I used to eat like cereal for breakfast. Well, a lot of that, even if it's enriched, it's really based on like a white flour or wheat or whatever. And so you're full for all of 10 minutes, and then pretty soon you're really hungry. But if you start converting your breakfast to something like eggs or oatmeal, you'll find that you can actually endure for several hours and not even be hungry in a very different way than if you actually have some of these white foods in your palate. So, and then the last thing to avoid is foods made with GMOs, genetically modified organisms. A lot of GMOs, there's a pesticide component that's been embedded into seeds. There's just still a lot of controversy out there with GMOs. There's some marketing out there saying that they're safe, but there's a lot more research that's starting to come out to say, hey, look, the long-term safety and validity of the studies out there that are saying that they're safe are not actually conclusive. And so, it's just one of those things that, I just try to avoid. So sugar, I said that I would talk a little bit about sugar. So I do want to read some of these statistics to you, just because I think that, we think, oh, I don't need a lot of sugar, right? But we forget how hidden sugar is in our foods, right? It's found in many foods and in many forms. It can be cane sugar, refined sugar, fructose corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, honey, maple syrup, maple sugar and maple syrup, agave are some of the forms that a lot of us know about. There's also the artificials, right? The aspartame, the sucralose, things of that nature. And in a moderate amount, some sugars, honey, maple syrup, cane sugar, and sugars in fruits are okay for your body. But typically, the diets today consist of unhealthy amounts of sugar. Because you'll often find, if you go into the grocery store or even into your pantry, depending on how you eat, you'll find sugar in places that you never expected to find sugar. And one specific form of sugar has become really, really prolific. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to give these statistics because when I first read these statistics, and now when I share these statistics, they're incredibly eye-opening. First and foremost, 200 years ago, the average American ate only 2 pounds of sugar a year. In 1970, we ate 123 pounds of sugar per year. Today, the average American consumes almost 152 pounds of sugar in 1 year. This is equal to 3 pounds or 6 cups of sugar consumed in 1 week. And back in 2009, the consumption in the United States was 9.9 million metric tons of sugar for our nation. And then it has bumped up in 2017 to 11.18 million metric tons of sugar consumed in the United States. So if you think that there's not a problem with sugar, we might want to think again. One of the sources that has become really problematic is high fructose corn syrup. The challenge with high fructose corn syrup is that it is 200 times sweeter than sugar and highly detrimental to our bodies. And it's added to most of the processed foods that are out there. Pick up a bottle of ketchup, you're likely to find high fructose corn syrup in it. You do frozen dinners, you're likely to find high fructose corn syrup in it. You know, even baby formulas have high fructose corn syrup, right? So from a very, very young age, we are putting these sweet products in our body, and it becomes actually highly addictive and changes our palates to desire more and more sweetness. And so it creates a very vicious cycle. If you want to know a little bit more about sugar, at the end, I do have my website, and I have a whole piece on sugar. I was in Cuba, well, several different times, but it's always difficult to share this conversation about sugar in Cuba because it is the backbone of that nation. And yet, even there, you know, just people's understanding of the impact of sugar, you know, is really interesting. Soft drinks are responsible for most of the added sugar in the average American diet. I think the thing that's really interesting is one 20-ounce can of soda contains 16 teaspoons of high fructose corn syrup, and a 20-ounce energy drink contains up to 60 teaspoons of high fructose corn syrup. So we're talking about a lot of sugar in just one small drink. So it's really important that we are thinking a lot about what we're putting in our systems. And actually, if you start looking at some of those like Gatorades and Powerades, they have just as much, if not more, sugar in those, and often in the forms of high fructose corn syrup. This last tidbit here is our hunter-gatherer ancestors consumed the equivalent of 20 teaspoons per year, and we are consuming it on a daily basis. And that's only if we're drinking one can of soda. So just some things to think about and be mindful. I do want to do a quick check to make sure, can everybody still hear me?
Yep, can hear you great.
Okay.
You're great.
Perfect. Perfect. And I do realize that we are an hour in, and I haven't gotten to the second portion. So I'm actually going to speed up. I'm sorry. I think it's really important that we're mindful on the nutrition side, because it impacts not just our athletic performance, but our everyday lifestyles. And so I do share a lot about the nutrition. So, some of the products that I like to use, and I am not paid by any of these, and I, don't have, I don't want to say I don't have preferences. I clearly have preferences, but one of the things too that I'm also really mindful of, like I said, I travel a lot, but even when you're out and about and exercising, and depending on what you're doing, if you're doing a long hike, if you're running a marathon, right, you need sometimes fuel to be able to take with you on the go. And so, so these are some of the different products that I will take. I will be honest with you. I will sometimes carry, things like, different bars, things with a lot of seeds, right? And less sweetened stuff in it are really helpful on the go. I try to minimize them as much as possible. So oftentimes, I'll kind of carry tuna. And these are really nice kind of packets to go. Trader Joe's has them, Sprouts, Natural Foods. You can find them in regular grocery stores as well. But, tuna is just a really great protein and pick-me-up. So, and actually now there are several companies that have packets of tuna that are already flavored, rosemary and sage or whatever they are. Some of them are spicy. So there's really great options for traveling with tuna. We talked about, dried coconut, right? So these coconut chips are really, really great. I like to also, and I don't have an example here, but I like to make my own trail mix. Rather than going out and buying trail mixes, I will buy a bunch of different nuts and dried fruits. Every once in a while, maybe like a dark chocolate chips or something, depending on how I'm feeling, and make my own trail mix, right? for any of you who shop at natural grocers, they have some really great products. These coconut mango pomegranate chews are really great. They're all natural. They do have fruits and seeds and things of that nature in it. So you do really want to make sure that you're looking for products that they don't have the artificial colors, they don't have the high fructose corn syrup, and they're as natural as possible. Again, olives, there are several brands now that have these nice little olive, packets. The other thing is, and you'll see this in the brochure that's going out, I actually, in terms of sports drinks, right? Because water alone isn't always effective, especially if you're doing longer distance sports, whether it's a hiking or mountain biking or running or whatever. You do sometimes need additional supplementation. So electrolytes are super duper important, right? And so there's a couple of different options. First and foremost, coconut water in and of itself is nature's natural Gatorade. It actually has a perfect balance of electrolytes for you. You do want to make sure that if you get coconut water, it does not have any added sugars, because a lot of them will have added sugars. You don't need them, right? I actually purchased some coconut water with aloe vera juice. Aloe vera is really good for your tummy, especially. And it's just a really good healing juice as well. I have this here because, number one, you can drink it by itself, but I also have 2 recipes in the brochure. One of them is for like your natural sports drink. And so it's a combination of coconut water, tart cherry juice, sea salt. And then if you wanted, you can also add some trace mineral drops, or this in and of itself is a really good, and then just, some water to kind of cut it. But this in and of itself actually provides you all of the different minerals and nutrition that you need for replenishment. And then actually, if you go online, there are many DIY, all natural, if you want lemon lime flavor, ginger flavor, right? So there's lots of recipes out there of how to make your own sports drinks that don't have as all of the artificial ingredients, the added fillers, becomes all natural. So these are some really good products to be thinking about, in your repertoire of eating naturally. But you can also just do something like some trace minerals, just drops into your water as well. Or I do have, and I'm not a big fan of gummies, but these were on sale and I thought I would just try them. So I should say I'm not a big fan of gummies from the store because they're normally sugar coated, so it's too much sugar. But like I said, I bought them just to try it out and see what they were like and to have on hand in case of an emergency. I don't use them often. But in the brochure that I'm giving you, I actually give you a recipe for how to make your own electrolyte chews, right? So like Cliff, they'll have those chews. And so I've got a recipe. I actually, I don't use gelatin because most gelatin out there is either pork or shellfish based, but there is a product called agar powder that is, it is vegan. And you can use this in place of gelatin, and it helps to congeal, and actually it congeals within 20 minutes. It's really amazing. I gave you the recipe for ginger lavender. It's one that I make. It's a little bit different flavor, but you can always supplement the flavors with something else, right? And I try to keep the sugar content pretty low, so I use raw honey. So here's an example that I got from Trader Joe's. I prefer, as much as possible, where is it? Trying to do something local, right? So the nice thing about local honey is that you also boost your immune system and your allergies. So if you have allergies, it helps to help your body adapt to the different pollens in the area. So honey has so many beneficial properties to it. So I try to supplement any sugars with honey as much as possible, but keep those levels down. So you can always make adjustments to the level of honey if you want it a little bit sweeter. I keep it as minimal as possible. Another thing is coconut oil. I will at times actually just have like a tablespoon of coconut oil and just eat that, right? So it's a good, healthy fat. And, you know, it gives you some sustained energy. This is from Trader Joe's. I don't have the box here, but they have these really great ones that are individual packets. You can add this to a hot drink. You can add this, you know, use it for cooking, whatever, or you can even just take a straight up shot of it. But if you're looking for something to travel with, these packets are pretty amazing. Other things you'll see in the recipe, I give kind of a chia seed quasi overnight oats recipe. So chia and flax seeds are two of the things in there. We talked earlier about sort of combining things. So something like a hummus and snap peas for a snack, or like this isn't a nut butter, sunflower is a seed really, but like a sunflower butter and an apple. These are all really great pairing combinations for naturally fueling your workout. So does anybody have questions about any of the food that I just talked about?
My question's not directly related to the food that you were just talking about, but I guess it's on the subject. What do you recommend, like, for instance, when I'm getting back into trail running and I wake up in the morning, I'm not always that hungry first in the morning, but I, of course, need to fuel myself. And, you know, I can apply that to other days, like in the winter when you get up really early and you might be trying to get out and beat the ski traffic to the backcountry for backcountry skiing, or beat it to the resorts or whatever. And, you know, that's when sometimes I personally make some bad decisions with my food, because sometimes you grab what's convenient. But so, yeah, what would you recommend in the morning, I guess?
And then, you know what, that's a really great question, because I used to, when I was younger, and also when I was young, running shorter distances, I would be like, I don't need to eat before I run, you know? And then I realized, well, you start running, you know, 8, 10, 12 miles, like you have to eat something even if you're not hungry, right? And so one of the things that I like to do is I like to hard boil eggs. You know, hard boil half dozen eggs, and you leave them in the fridge. And that way, if you're running, even whether it's the first thing in the morning or even throughout the day, it's like, oh man, I don't have time to cook. I don't have anything prepared. I can't chop anything. Boom, hard boiled eggs, you know, you put them in water for 20 minutes, you boil them, you're done, and you stick them in the fridge, right? Grab a hard boiled egg, eat that, put a little bit of sea salt on it, right? That's oftentimes a go-to. I don't even necessarily eat the whole thing, right? Other things that I'll do, and depends too, sometimes if I'm like, I was supposed to wake up and meet the girls, you know, and I have like 5 minutes, right? I try not to eat too much. I normally don't like to eat that, you know, quickly before I am exercising, but there have been those moments where I'm like, I couldn't get myself out, but at the last minute I finally did, you know, and so it might be like a half a banana with a little bit of like a nut butter or a peanut butter, you know, something like that. It could be like a multi-grain toast, you know, with some nut butter on it, or two. So there, like I said in the brochure, it has this chia seed recipe, which it does have oats in it as well. So some people might consider it an overnight oats recipe. So making some overnight oats where you stick them in the fridge, right? You mix it all up, and there's so many different combinations of overnight oats, and you can be inventive. One of the things that I say is, you know, every recipe that I make, like, it's so funny because as I've been trying to perfect that gummies recipe, because I was given one and I didn't like it, right? I didn't want to use the gelatin, and so I've tried many different forms of it, and I just throw things together and I change it up, and I realize I'm like, no, I have to be specific because I have to share this recipe with people, right? But feel free to be creative, right? Start understanding, like, you know, things of like adding ginger, adding cinnamon, right? Adding different spices that are actually great immune boosters that, you know, and create like overnight oats with lots of different varieties, right? You can put a base together, and then, you know, one day you add berries to it, and then the other day you're adding, you know, apples and cinnamon or raisins and, you know, something like that. So those are some of my go-to options for early morning. And again, with the overnight oats, you can have a couple of bites, right? And, you know, as much or as little as you want. And it's really sustaining, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Russ, I did see that you are now hungry again. I'm sorry about that. So hopefully tomorrow you can start trying some of these, different recipes or options. All right. Okay. So then we will, you know what, Logan, can you do me a favor, because the internet on my other computer is out, so I can't see anybody. Can you actually share the screen so that I can see the PowerPoint and see, I know that it's not necessarily people, but it just makes me nervous that somehow my other connection's lost when I can't see anything but my screen.
Oh yeah, no worries. So pull up your PowerPoint that you sent me and bring it back up, or or you send?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can pull that back up, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And while he's doing that, I'll kind of jump in. The next slide that we were on was stay hydrated. So, and I did kind of reference this early on, is that, the nice thing is if you start adding like the fruits, the vegetables, all of those actually have a high level of water content, right? And so as you're eating those foods, it's helping to rehydrate your body. You still, though, do want to make sure that you are staying hydrated. And it is especially important, as I'm sure many of you guys are aware, although I was actually really surprised when I moved to Colorado of how much people aren't drinking water. And I'm like, how can you not? Like, I'm constantly parched. It took a long time for my body to start adjusting, but really hydration is super important, right? So we talked about like the need for oxygen to get into all parts of our body. And I realize I might not have hit it hard enough early on, but excuse me, if we can fuel as well as possible, right? If you kind of followed and really ate super healthy and all of these really nutrient dense foods, but you your body wasn't able to transport the oxygen throughout your system, it's not really effective, right? Because we need that oxygen in order to actually trigger our cells to use the fuel that we're putting in our body, right? So we want that iron in our food to be able to transport it, and we need that hydration, right? The water in our system, it also moves that oxygen through our system. So hydration is super important. A couple of statistics. When you feel thirsty, it means you've already lost 1 to 2% of your water content, which might not seem like a big deal, but 5% of dehydration actually starts creating confusion, dizziness, mental distress, and an endurance decrease, right? So 1 to 2%, you're already thirsty, you're already lost, you're halfway to starting to see your performance decrease. 10% dehydration, delirium, blurred vision, 12 to 20%, a person could die, right? So you really want to make sure that you're staying hydrated. And one of the things that I also learned was, those electrolytes. So doing that combination, you do want to be careful that you're not hydrating with a lot of sugary things, but which is why, again, those trace mineral drops are really important, because they have those micronutrients that your body needs that you're not getting from most of your foods, and you can drop them in water without getting a bunch of other sugar, right? Some people say, hey, look, I don't like drinking water, it's boring. And so they shy away from water, right? That's why they'll go to the sodas or the sugary waters and things of that nature, or even the vitamin water. I mean, vitamin water still has a lot of sugar in it, right? So what I say is, a friend of mine started calling it spa water. Make some spa water, add some fruits, add some herbs, without sugar, add them to your water, right? So like a cucumber lime, or a cucumber mint, or rosemary and lemon, right? Strawberry or oranges, right? You don't need multiple things. You can just do one thing, put in your water and let it sit for a little bit. And it just adds a little bit of extra zing. That's really great and flavorful. And a lot of people then start enjoying actually drinking water. Logan, I see a lot of tabs, but I don't see, did we lose you?
I'm here. Sorry. I think I was sharing the wrong screen.
Okay, no problem. So while you're doing that, I'll just continue. And actually, I'm realizing it's always nice to have the PowerPoint up, but we're actually going to start moving into So we're talking about oxygen, right? And we want to start talking about mindfulness. And the thing that, you know, for me, I mean, mindfulness means a lot of things. There are a lot of different elements to mindfulness. But tonight we're really going to be focusing on breathing, right? Because like I said, oxygen is needed to burn fuel in our cells to produce energy. Our bodies are made up of approximately 2/3 of oxygen. It's what gives us the, you know, it's that catalytic converter that changes everything in our body so that we can actually start moving and thinking and processing every little aspect of our life. If we don't have enough oxygen, we experience issues such as difficulty breathing, confusion, dizziness, chest pain, headaches, rapid breathing, racing heart. Too little oxygen obviously could also lead into death, right? And so the thing that we also want to be mindful of, if our body is not in the condition to allow for the proper movement of oxygen, so it's not just about fueling and giving our body the proper fuel, so when the oxygen hits, right, it can then give us the energy we need. But if the oxygen actually can't get to the places that it needs to get to, we see a decline in our performance as well. And so, so for those, like I've said several different times, for those exercising in altitude, you're already at an oxygen disadvantage. So you want to ensure you're doing all that you can to ensure you have adequate oxygen in your system. And so one of the things that we really need to be thinking about is some of the different components of how we get oxygen into our bodies and throughout our bodies, right? And so one of those components is just our breath in general. So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about breathing, because too often, because of the stress and because of the busyness of life, we're actually not breathing appropriately. And so we're not even giving our bodies enough energy to really get the oxygen that we need to get our food moving throughout our whole entire body. Another thing that I want to talk about is posture. And some of that posture, you know, is even simple of how you're sitting in a chair, not even just your posture and breathing, right? And other posture, you know, we often in this day and age now, so many people are constantly on their phones and they're texting. And so you'll see that many people's shoulders and back are rounded in and their neck is rounded down. And there's a whole host of problems with this. But one of the things is it actually inhibits oxygen intake in our bodies, and it decreases the amount of oxygen that comes into our bodies because it's collapsing our lungs. And so just your simple posture and being mindful on an everyday basis of how you're sitting and that you're not closing your body up, because again, you're reducing the amount of oxygen, and actually over time, it actually shortens our life. So we want to be thinking about our breathing. We want to be thinking about our posture, and then we want to just be thinking about our overall stress and tension in our body. Because even if we're breathing well, if we have knots in our body, right? If our body is tense and you know, full of all of that tension and inflammation, it's almost like it creates roadblocks, right? So if you've got you know, like knots up in your shoulders, right, from all that stress and tension, that oxygen can't, that blood can't move, so that oxygen can't get through. So it's stymieing our body's ability to get the oxygen to the different places that it needs. And over time, you know, this causes different parts of our bodies to start shutting down and dying off because it can't get the fuel that it needs. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time. We're going to do some breathing exercises, and we're going to be talking about some other things that you can do to start opening your body back up so that the oxygen can really kind of move through. So we're going to jump to the next slide, which says inventory time. So before we go any further and we actually start doing some breath work and we start talking about some of these other techniques, I want you to take a few minutes and I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to do some introspection. Reflect and feel the different parts of your body. And I don't mean physically touch them. We'll actually do some touching in a little bit, but just kind of think through and notice, right? Do you have any headaches, right? Are you holding tension in your jaw? How are your shoulders in your back? Are they loose? Are they tight? How is your breathing? What about your hips and your back? Is there any pain there? Your legs, your calves, your feet. We hold a lot of tension actually in our feet without even realizing it. So just do an inventory on your body right now and notice if you have any areas of pain or discomfort. Notice where you may be holding that stress or tension. Feel your face. Is your face relaxed? Are you breathing or are you holding your breath? And overall, do you feel relaxed or stressed and tense? Now you don't, if anybody wants to share how they're feeling, they can. You can either put it in the chat or you can unmute yourself. But remember, you might want to kind of jot down, you know, a couple of things that you're feeling right now, or just kind of remember this feeling. And now what we're going to do is we're going to actually do a little bit of breathing exercises. Before we start, I just want to talk a little bit about breathing. We don't often think about breathing. I mean, we don't often think about breathing because it just comes naturally, right? It's not something that we have to think about. But really, when it comes to athletic performance, you don't often hear a lot of coaches saying, oh yeah, you know, do, 20 push-ups, 50 burpees, and, 10 deep breaths, right? That's normally not in your regimen for how you are practicing and training, right? But breathing is actually highly essential. And over the weekend, I was in a yoga for trauma course. And one of the people in it was a personal trainer, and he worked with a lot of boxers. And he actually says that he starts with breath work. And many boxers, people who've been boxing, aren't often conscious of their breathing and are often holding their breath and taking very short breaths. But he really spends the first 3 sessions with them focusing on their breathing. And he says it really transforms their performance in the long run when they actually learn how to breathe. So breathing is actually highly essential in your athletic performance and in your everyday life. Deep breaths make sure that your air reaches the alveoli, which is where that exchange takes place, and it helps to oxygenate our blood, right? Which then, of course, increases the oxygen levels in our blood. So when we start actually breathing deep, full breaths, we are training up our lungs, because right now, most people are breathing at a fraction of the capacity that their lungs actually have the ability to intake. And these shallow breaths, again, are not allowing enough oxygen to get into our systems and then work through and get the oxygen where it needs to in our bodies. The other thing is breathing exercises not only strengthen our endurance, but obviously it helps to reduce our stress levels through focus and calmer breaths, and creates better clarity, right? So as you're thinking through, breath work is really good, especially if you're about to perform in a race, right? You're in some kind of competition. Breath work is really important in helping to recenter and calm yourself so that you can really focus on what lies ahead. And then it can also help rid the lungs of accumulated stale air. And like I said, increase the oxygen levels and get the diaphragm to return to its job of helping you breathe. Because most of us we're not using our diaphragm to breathe. So we are going to, there's a couple of different types of breathing. I'm not going to go into all of them. But we're going to do, the first one on here is back breathing. Actually, before we even get into some of these techniques, let's just take a moment and close your eyes. And I want you to sit up straight in your chair, as straight as you can, without being rigid, right? I don't want you to feel like, the drill sergeant is walking past and, will make you drop and do 20 you know, if you're not as straight as possible. You want to be straight. Sit up very tall. Pretend like there is a string pulling your head up, right? So make your body as long as possible, but make it relaxed. Drop your shoulders down so that they're not tensed up, and just kind of do a little bit of shaking of your body so that you loosen up, okay? And you can put your arms to the side, or I like to put my hands on my knees. And then what I want you to do is just take a deep breath in through your nose. We're going to try to breathe in for 4 seconds. And then you're going to pause for just a second. And then you're going to take a deep breath out through your mouth. And I don't want it to be a loud whooshing sound, and it shouldn't be forced, but you're going to actually exhale with a little bit of noise, right? You should hear your breath coming out. So I don't know if people can see me or not, if they just see the slides, and I don't know, from Zoom how easy. Okay, perfect. From Zoom, I don't know how easy it is to see. Normally I'm doing this kind of face-to-face with people. So, and if you want to stand, if it's easier for you, if you're standing doing this, you can totally stand to do this as well. But just take a few moments and breathe in for 4 through your nose, calmly. And then pause and exhale out your mouth for 4 seconds. You want your kind of inhale and exhale to be the same, so it just starts bringing a sense of rhythm and calmness to your body. So I'm going to kind of start counting. So we're going to inhale through your nose for 4 and pause and exhale out your mouth. And inhale and pause and exhale. Why don't you do 3 more of those at your own pace? You can breathe in a little bit longer. Try not to make it too much shorter though. Okay. Now, one of the things when you're breathing, sometimes when we're not used to kind of those deep breaths, people will kind of breathe in, kind of stiffly. Make sure that when you are doing your deep breaths, they are slow, they are calm. And even because I do find, like, if I'm really stressed out, there's a lot going on, I do find when I start trying to do some of the deeper breathing, I not just kind of breathing shortly through my lungs. So a couple of things that you can do to try to put yourself in check is you can do one of them, what's called back breathing. So if you put your arms on your sides and you breathe in, you should feel your arms kind of expanding and your back expanding, right? So, and then when you exhale, right, your arms should go in a little bit as you exhale, right? It shouldn't just be all in the lungs. You should actually be trying to focus on, if you can visualize getting air into your back. It might take some time to build on that, but if you have that as your focus, as your goal of like, how can I get my breath calmly to my back? It will really make a difference. And, when you actually get a lot of oxygen into your back, it actually will help with some of the low back tension and pain that some people might experience. So you can, like I said, put your arms and then feel your sides expand and then in. The other thing that you can do when you're practicing breathing is oftentimes we'll watch our chest expand, but really it's our diaphragm. So it should be more like if you watch a baby breathe, their tummies move, right? So as you're breathing, your tummy should actually be expanding and then it should be contracting as you're exhaling. So as you're actually practicing your breathing, these are a couple of different techniques that you can use to gauge whether or not you're fully expanding your lungs to their extent. Another thing, so, we can start doing our breathing and we can start doing that relaxation. Another thing that I like to do is, as I'm breathing, is adding, so I went down, I talked about back breathing, and then I talked about belly breathing. So we're down now, Logan, into the movement section. So one more up. You missed it. There we go. So the other thing is actually, as you start breathing more, is actually learning how to open our bodies back up. Especially, I think, during the time of COVID, but even everyday life pre-COVID. So often there's so much going on right now with all the news and the fear tactics and what's going to happen, and people losing their jobs, kids, having to go to school from home and working from home all at the same time. There's so much stress and tension going on. People are often, in a position where their body's very closed. And when your body starts closing up, again, it makes it really difficult for oxygen to be moving through. So I like to, when I'm doing the deep breathing, I like to then start moving my body. And so it's really important that, again, they're minor things. And actually, Logan, if you can put the camera so that people can see me, and I invite you guys to actually stand up and join me as well. When I've done these exercises, in other groups, again, 5 minutes and just simple practicing. And, people walk out and say, oh my gosh, I've had this neck pain for 5 years and I actually have relief, right? So just very simple things can make big differences. So combining eating right, hydrating right, start breathing, and then that movement, you'll really start seeing your body open up. You'll start seeing yourself calm, right? And then, your ability to then improve your performance and stay more focused. Really, it just starts all falling in line. So when I do my breathing, I might start with the first couple breaths where I'm just doing the inhale, exhale, but then I like to start moving my arms, right? So as I inhale, I kind of bring my arms up to remind myself to open up my body. And then as you're exhaling, you're gently letting them drop. Some people maybe they'll go up, right? However you want to move your arms, but that movement, right? You don't want it to be stiff. You want it to kind of flow with your breath, right? So deep breath in and exhale, right? Other things you can start doing is, things that, I don't know about you guys, but we used to do in gym class, doing your arm circles, right? So much tension gets built up in our necks. And so arm circles start breaking that up. I remember a couple years ago, my son went through a really difficult time, and it was very stressful. And I started doing these, and I was like, this is painful and this is difficult, and it really shouldn't be, but it's because of all the tension that gets built up, right? So when you're doing this, you're starting to break up all of that tension. And think about it like compacted ground, right? So, if you're in some place that, steamrollers and trucks and cars keep rolling over, trying to break into that ground to plant a seed is going to be difficult. But you get a jackhammer into there, you start moving it up, it actually starts loosening up that soil so things can start moving in. We need to be thinking of our bodies in that same way. And so we really want to, on a daily basis, when we're using technology, stop and take a few moments, start breathing, and then start moving. Move your arms, do neck rolls, right? And neck rolls, if you're going to do them, you want to make sure that you're opening up your mouth so that you're protecting your jaw. So you don't need it wide, but you do want your mouth to be slightly open. And then you can start doing some neck rolls. Some people just like to sort of toggle back and forth in the front, but you can, as long as you keep your mouth open, you can actually go and do full circles slowly so you don't injure yourself. And you might find that if you've got a lot of tension, that it sounds like your neck is crunching or cracking or something. And that, again, is all of that tension, all of that stress that's been building up and creating adhesions in your body, and you're trying to start breaking that up. If you feel that sensation, if you feel that tightness, it means that oxygen isn't able to flow appropriately. And we need our oxygen to be flowing, especially to our brain and really every other part of our body. So neck rolls, right? And then another thing is we carry a lot in our waist and in our hips, right? So torso, right? Moving your torso, right? Full circles. not just a half circle, but actually doing like a slight back bend. If you do have back issues, you may need to be careful with this one, or you may have to eliminate it. Or what you can do is you might be able to kind of go down and do, you know, kind of like a, I like to say like the elephant trunk, right? And wave back and forth, but start moving your torso and get all that buildup of tension in your hips out. And then, you know, bends, you know, whether there's squats, right? You want to make sure that you're standing as straight as possible, but you're starting to then bend and move your legs, right? So getting that movement, and then finding areas in your body. I'm not an expert on this, so I'm not going to go deep into it, but I've done a little bit of work of tapping, right? And so whether it's actually sort of, you know, that whole theory of tapping, or just starting to go through your body and say, where am I holding? Whether it's slight massaging and saying, where am I holding tension? And you're going to start feeling it, you know, like there are times where this part is really, really sore. I just do this and it's like, wow, that hurts, right? And other times it's totally fine, right? And so finding those areas in your body where that tension is being held and moving it so that the oxygen can be flowing. Other things that I do to make sure that the oxygen can flow, right, so that I can continue my deep breathing and focus on that mindfulness is, I call it propped massage, right? So I've got a couple of things over here. And, you know, there's lots of products on the market that you can pay a lot of money for. Being a single mom, I often didn't have a lot of money. So you can improvise, right? Rocks, I will pick up rocks that are perfect and I will use them to start rolling and massaging, right? So I got knots on my shoulders, so I'm going to start rolling them, right? There are other things like these little massage roller balls, right? I'll also use, you know, this was a dog, right? It's supposed to be a dog toy, right? It's really, really hard. And so this is really great. You can put it up against the wall. You can use your hand, but you can also put it against the wall and start massaging different areas of your back. Golf balls, all of these things, you know, find little trigger points on your body and start massaging. Because all of these things will make a huge difference and actually feel really good in the long run. And then don't forget the bottoms of your feet. Like I said, we hold a lot of tension in the bottoms of the feet, and we also don't think about actually stretching the bottom of the feet. But our feet has a lot of trigger points and pressure points that actually stimulate so many different parts of our body. So don't neglect your feet, and make sure that you are giving them just as much love, because our feet, they're the basis of our bodies and everything that we need. A couple of other things that I also do, you know, because our brains need a lot of oxygen. And so if I need to get things flowing and moving, I'll do headstands, right? Or propping up your feet, especially after a long workout. So leaning up against the wall and putting my feet up against the wall so that, again, that blood is starting to actually move, not, you know, away from our feet back towards our heart, right? And then another thing that I put on here is facial movements. So often we become so serious, right? And we need to just stop and not take ourselves so seriously. Smile, make funny faces, you know, just start laughing, right? All of these things actually will really be helpful. And I know it's like, well, what does this have to do with, you know, athletic performance? But it actually is really, really beneficial, because it just opens up your body and it allows for all of that nutrition to do what it's designed to do in your body. And then this last slide here is on de-stressing. And so just a couple of other tidbits, a little bit of mindfulness, but again, I think, you know, it's as we think about athletic performance, often we're so focused on the competition, making our next goal, but really you'll find many really competitive athletes who are actually realizing that all that competition in the long run creates burnout. And so they have often come to a place where their body crashes. And so actually going back in and building in some of these de-stressing techniques will bring them back to a place where maybe they aren't able to do exactly what they were doing before, but it brings them back a love and a joy and a passion for working out, the ability to actually, get back on their game or a new game potentially, right? So making sure that even in the face of everything that you're doing, that you are de-stressing, right? That you're not letting that competition, that performance, just run you over and constantly push you to those extreme places, because that first and foremost creates a lot of inflammation in your body, which then leads to, various diseases and sickness and illness. And then, in the long run, you're not effective. So a couple of things to be thinking about. So starting and ending your day with a time of silence, prayer, meditation, reflection, right? And whatever that means for you, to help connect you back to your source, allowing you to focus on those things that bring joy, energy, and peace, and resets us so that we're ready to take on a new day. And I know that can be hard. Like I said, I'm a single mom. I raised 2 kids alone for 23 years, and some days that was really difficult. But as much as you can, reset, right? Somebody shared with me this metaphor of like a pilot, right? So a pilot has an end destination. Maybe they're flying from Denver to LAX. And the thing is, they don't do a straight shot from Denver to LAX. They set their goal, they set their mission, but the winds and the turbulence in the air will push them, right? So they have to constantly course correct, right? So we need to remember that in those moments where the winds and the turbulence are pushing us, we need to take moments to course correct and reset our goal and reset, our lives, so that we can be in a state where our body is actually ready to perform as optimally as possible. And allowing your body time to rest. I have so many friends who, have been, especially runners. I've got a big community of ultra, runners and, people who do marathons and things of that nature. And several of them who they don't allow their bodies time to rest. And they have had injury upon injury upon injury. And I've had a couple of injuries, baby toe injuries, because I'm a barefoot runner and they trip over rocks, but not to the same degree, that several of my friends have. So it is really important that we are allowing our bodies some time to rest, irrespective of what lies ahead when it comes to an athletic competition. And a couple of things, that we don't necessarily think of when we talk about rest. Oftentimes we think of quiet time, sleeping, things of that nature, but it's actually even in thinking about when we're eating. Right? So avoiding eating 2 hours before bedtime, right? Because if we're eating that close to before we go to bed, while we're sleeping, our body is still trying to process our food. So your body can't actually fully rest, and you can't get into that deep sleep that your body actually needs for restoration. So trying to not eat 2 hours before bedtime. Also, trying to be thinking about, and I didn't put this on the slide, but a ton of grazing is also not a really good thing, right? Because your body is constantly then processing food. It actually needs time between eating to be at rest as well. So be thinking about that in terms of stress maintenance. A couple of other things: turning off the electronics, which includes our phones, computers, the television, things of that nature. Playing soft music is an exception, but just making sure that if you're doing that, whatever you're using isn't emitting a bunch of lights, especially blue lights, because that does mess with our sleep cycles. And then also you want to be careful of again, it should be soft, calming music, right? It shouldn't be something jarring that makes you want to get up and dance. And you should also, if you're going to watch something, you also want to make sure that it's not something that creates a lot of adrenaline, because even though if you're watching an action show on TV, it may be the people in the show that are doing all the action, but your body is responding the same way that they are, right? So you want to be putting your body, moving your body towards rest before you go to bed. Things that I try to do, and it's not always possible, I get it, but lowering the lights and the noise. I love to turn on candles, only turn on the lights that are needed, find the dimmest lights as possible, keeping the noise down, and which, could be keeping the children's noise down, but it's also, music, things that you're listening to, your tone of voice, and things of that nature. And you know, even too, when it comes to sort of keeping things low, even when you wake up, you kind of want to practice that same cycle. You want to ease into sleep and ease out of sleep, right? So actually, if you can find, either train your body to wake up without an alarm, or if you can find an alarm that gently kind of moves into waking up, try not to turn on the lights as much as possible, or just a very small dim light, or use natural lighting. You know, it's going to be hard in the wintertime when, you know, it's dark until 8 in the morning and it gets not, you know, dark at 4 o'clock at night, but, you know, try to calm yourself in and out of the day. So those are just some general de-stressing techniques that I like to share with people, because they really make a profound difference on just your daily life. So as we wrap up, a couple of things that I just want to say: the race is not won by the swift, nor the battle by the strong, but to those who endure with patience and wisdom. So none of this is about making a ton of changes really quickly, or trying to sort of speed through and apply all of this stuff right away, but actually looking and making small adjustments over time, and just continuing to trek forward and move forward. And then start with where you are. Do what you can, seek wisdom, and just keep taking one step at a time. You know, so I know I've shared a lot of information here. Some of it's on your food, some of it's on different techniques that you can start using to start calming, being more mindful, and to open up your body so it's more effective. But don't feel like you have to integrate everything all at once. You know, find one thing from this workshop and make a change. So that's what I have to share. I have gone a little bit longer than I had anticipated, so I apologize. I know we're still within that time slot, but so I wanted to just kind of get some feedback from you. If anybody participated in that breathing, I know we didn't do a lot of them, and I moved through them kind of quickly, but if you participated in that breathing and any of the movements, even in that really short window, did you notice any change?
I'm happy to respond. Of course, I was getting up and down and trying to be assistant to the presentation, but it's amazing just checking in with your body. How I was kind of like what you were talking about, recognizing where I felt stiffness, and just kind of being mindful of that and trying to breathe through it. Not necessarily that I necessarily feel better after, because I have been sitting a lot today, more than I would have liked, but it's an important thing that I like you said, kind of at the end, having a small step, to stand up, to stretch, to walk around, and to check in with my body and to be mindful of that is definitely something I was thinking about during that time.
Wonderful. Anybody else? Okay, then are there any other questions or anything that you want to know or follow up on? All right.
If not, Mita, we will be, we will have an audience watching this recording as well, since we did have many people sign up and even pay that didn't join us live. So I assume that means they will be watching the recording. We will post that on social media, so that'll be another time that we can hopefully get to some questions if people do have any then. I want to thank everyone for joining us live and participating. And of course, thank you so much.
No problem. Well, and if anybody's interested, I do have some workshops. We do have what are called our thirst quenchers Monday and Friday morning. So it's kind of a way to start and end your week, just taking some time to do some breathing and reflecting, just really starting your week off right and ending it on a positive note. And then a natural immunity. So we go in a little bit more on, foods to build your immune system and other ways to be building your immune system. I think especially in this time with COVID, the best thing that we can be doing is really building up our immune systems, right? So if anybody's interested, there is a discount code for anybody who has attended or is watching this. So it's just CMC October 2020 or OCT 2020. And then if you refer a friend, you get $10 off for up to 4 friends. And the code is also listed here, and all of this information I think would then be in that email as well. So, and you can also check out the website for information, or email me if you have any questions. So thank you guys all for participating. It's been a pleasure running this workshop for you guys, and I'm looking forward to hearing from anybody in the future. And thank you, Logan.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you once again for everyone joining, and please integrate some of this into your upcoming fitness challenges. Everyone have a good night.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.